Hello everyone, my name is Kathleen and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you how I went from being a completely new runner to running an ultra marathon. Now since this summer I have since ran a 50 miler and a 100 miler, so let me know if you want to hear those stories, but this is the story of how I went from 5K to 50K. I had previously ran with friends back in Arkansas, but this was always untrained and I had to just drag my feet through it. There was a lot of walking breaks, which of course I'm not against. I'm now an ultra runner and walking is normal. But at the time, I could just tell that it was due to being overweight and being out of shape. Well, years went by. I had multiple pregnancies, couple kids, and I was recently postpartum with my now youngest. He is 3.5 now. And I just felt like I needed something for myself. I was knee deep in postpartum depression and things were not good. And so I would work out every day because I noticed that when I worked out, it was as though the clouds parted and I had a little bit more joy in my day. So I started doing it every day. It could just be a 10-minute arms, 10-minute abs, it was never very much. And then I got a used Fitbit off Facebook Marketplace, very cheap, and started trying to get my steps in. So sometimes at the end of the day, if I noticed I hadn't gotten my steps, I would just run in place. And then during that time, I also increased my workouts, started doing some Sydney Cummings here on YouTube. Just really liked that. For my birthday, I asked for a set of like 10-pound dumbbells, like I'm trying to get fit, but I don't know where to start. Didn't really know progressive overload and wasn't necessarily eating high protein. I do now. So if you want more content on high protein, high fiber eating, I've got lots of stuff on my channel. Feel free to check it out. I just ran through my house the last little while to get some steps in. I bet I could run a mile. If that's an average mile time, that's about how long I was running. So one day I decided, I'm going to give it a shot. And I ran a mile without stopping to walk for the first time in my entire life. And it shocked me. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep doing this. I didn't have a jogging stroller yet, but we had a bike trailer. And if you kind of put this handle on it, you could kind of run with it. It wasn't the best, but it was working. So I started incorporating a little bit more movement during my week. And I found the endorphins from running were way better than the endorphins I was getting from these at-home workouts. So that made me really excited. And I just started pursuing running more. I did have a lot of knee pain. I'm sure my form was bad, didn't have strength, and I had really old, crappy shoes. So the knee pain was probably inevitable. So it delayed things, but I didn't give up. I talked to my sister and I said for my birthday in April, this is just a few weeks later, I'd really like to run a 5K or a 10K. We signed up for something virtual together. The shirt came, the medal came, and it was just like a goal to work towards. So I started training a little bit more. Now a 10K is 6.2 miles, and that felt impossible. The idea of running 6.2 miles without stopping when I had just ran 1 mile without stopping. But I slowly increased that to 2 and 3 miles. I remember there was something really stressful that happened at that time. And I just opened the door. I was like, hey, honey, I'm going to go for a walk. And he's like, yeah, babe, absolutely. I opened the door and I started running the moment I left my house. And I was like, that was a good 5K time because I ran 3.1 miles. And so I was like, okay, so I do have more fitness than I thought. I think I could get ready for a 10K. I'd have to push myself, but with my sister saying she would run a 5K and then me saying I'd run a 10K and us having ordered these shirts, I felt a little bit more motivation. So I did it, and around the time of my birthday, I think it was the weekend right after, I ran my first ever 10K, and I ran it without stopping. I was absolutely thrilled. And while I was training for it, I thought, what if I went for a half marathon? I was like, 13 miles is double the 10K. Why do I keep doing this? But I just really felt the drive, and I was loving the endorphins. I was loving the way it was helping me lose the postpartum weight. And so I just thought, you know what? Also, I really want a hobby outside of motherhood. I think motherhood can be so 24/7 and so demanding that you need something for yourself. So that became running for me. So I did eventually train and run a half marathon. I think it took me a little over a month to build up to that mileage. And I was still nursing my son, came home from the half marathon. I had not drank electrolytes for 13.1 miles, came home and oh, it was full sun. I remember running at one point, and we live in Colorado, so it was like a mountainous run. There's no shade. I'm on the side of the mountain and full sun, right? My husband had refilled my water once because I had only a really tiny pack I got at the thrift store for a few dollars. And so he had to refill it once. But I was like, this is great. I'm going to make it through, you know. But I got home and I had been seeing stars. I nursed my son as soon as I got home, and I thought I was going to pass out. I felt horrible after nursing him. I started sweating. I started feeling weak because I was already dehydrated, already low on electrolytes, and then I nursed my son. And breast milk comes from your blood volume. So it was just, I was completely depleted. So I tried adding some salt to some water and drinking it, and I overdid it on the salt, ended up in the restroom. It was miserable. And then I started to really question myself, like, am I a runner? Can I do this? And trying to find the joy in it. But also I was like, I did that, and I did it well. I ran 13.1 miles without walking. I really think I can continue to build this. And I started watching some YouTubers and realizing this whole ultramarathon community was out there. And I don't know why I kind of mentally skipped past a marathon, but I did. My goal from the half marathon was a 50K, which is 31 miles. So I found one not too far away, and it was the start and stop point. So, like, the start and then loops around, goes up a mountain, across a bridge, down a different mountain, and back. The start and stop was a park I'd taken my kids to, and I thought, I'm going to go to that park for me that day. Like, I am spending all of my life going to these parks for my kids. That day when we go to that park, it's just going to be for me. And I think it's okay, by the way, to do that. You're allowed to take time for yourself, moms. So I signed up for the 50K, and one time we were out as a family by the river and had eaten a sandwich, and this girl ran by. She's now a good running friend of mine, Rebecca, and she had on a pack. She was running at a more moderate pace. It was full sun. She stopped and got something to drink near where we were. So I went in and I was like, hi, what's your name? Like, introduced myself so awkwardly. And I was like, are you training for something? And she's like, yeah, I actually just signed up for a 50K. We had signed up for the same 50K. So I was like, no, you're stuck with me. I'm going to be your best friend and we're going to train together. And she became my training partner. So cheers to Rebecca. That was so kismet. It was absolutely incredible that we got to meet. And we trained together from then on. So I would get up, a dark 30. We'd start running in the dark because I needed the rest of the day for my family. So I had to start running very, very early, even if I had slept really poorly the night before. But what else can you do? And I didn't have enough for like a gym membership, but I found a free treadmill online. We've since gotten rid of it, but for a while we had a treadmill. So sometimes I would run on the treadmill before meeting up with her, and just made it work. So I remember building up my mileage and feeling more and more confident, but also more and more scared because now I'm realizing how long a 50K is. And I was like, okay, if I can run a marathon, which is 26.2 miles, without stopping, then that tells me, okay, with the walking breaks you'll naturally take as you're hiking up a mountain, then you can run further, like the 31 miles, because if you can run 26 and add in walking breaks, it becomes 31. And so I was like trying to talk myself into it, right? So we ran, I think our longest run together was 21 miles. And we went all the way up that first mountain and through all the trails that connected to be part of the race. And then my husband picked us up at the bridge. And it was a doozy, but it was a lot of fun. I was incredibly proud of us. And that was her last long run for the training cycle. But mentally, I needed to know I could run further because 21 is the furthest I'd ran. And we were starting to realize the race might not be 31, it might be longer. In the end, it was much longer. So I picked out a route in Colorado Springs and I ran a marathon completely by myself, from North Colorado Springs all the way down to South Colorado Springs, and then stopped my watch, finished my race, and had to walk half a mile to find my husband. And I did it without stopping to walk, without stopping at all. And that just reminded me, that just proved to me that I had the grit. Now, there is some theories out there that those who've had harder lives are used to enduring hard difficulties, and those are usually situational: the loss of a loved one, a hard home environment, whatever. So when you do something hard like a marathon, you're getting to choose your hard. And I remember in college, in nursing school, when things would get really hard, my best friend's mom would just tell me, KBO, KBO, keep buggering on. And I would just put my blinders on like a horse and just plod on. Like, it didn't matter, how long it took me to get through my homework. I wasn't going to sleep till it was done. Didn't matter how many, things I had to say no to. I was going to get my hours in. And it was so hard, but I did it. Or nights before work when I would just cry and say, I don't want to go, Lord, I don't want to go. And the Lord would just give me assurance that that was the job he had for me. And so I would get up and I would go. So many things like that. The loss of my brother really shaped me. The loss of our firstborn son really shaped me. And these times of, you have to endure. There's no other option. So stop complaining and just move forward. And I really think I was finally realizing how to take that internal strength I'd been forced to develop through so many different things and put it into an outward expression. And it was like, oh wow, this superpower of endurance that I didn't know was optional. Now it can actually be helpful and something beneficial. So that was actually kind of nice. So I loved running that marathon. I just remember being crazy sore, but crazy proud. And then I took some time to recover off that and tapered. And during taper, my running partner Rebecca got hurt. And so in the end, she could not run the 50K and crewed me instead. And I'll never forget crying with her because it was so sad that we had trained for something all summer and suddenly I was going to do it alone and she wasn't going to get to do it. Now, she's run 50Ks. She'd run a 50 miler up to that point. This wasn't her first, but it was still her first in a long time and was just discouraging that happened. But she crewed me. So the day of the 50K, I show up to the start line, the park. I've come here so many times with my kids, but I'm finally coming for myself. It's cold and it's rainy, and so I had some extra layers on. And then I start running, and we passed this tree farm, and my husband had driven over there really quick to see us off one more time. And I was like, you know what? I've warmed up a little bit. Let me give you this extra coat so I don't have to carry it for the next 31 miles. So I give him that coat and continue on. And then by the time we make it to the mountain, the start of the mountain, everyone's kind of dispersed. I was pretty alone by that point. Oh, and then at the base of the mountain was a bunch of women from the moms group at our church cheering me on. So that was so surprising. I had no idea they were going to be there. I started crying. That was incredible. Ran up the mountain. There was a couple people I was kind of running with. And then at the top of the mountain, my hands were huge. They'd just been down by my side as I'd been hiking the whole time. I'd just been talking and drinking my electrolytes, and I'd waterlogged myself, so I couldn't get my ring off. And I remember I was so scared that it was going to get stuck that I ran 4 miles. I'm not kidding, 4 miles with my hands above my head, sometimes holding it like this so that I didn't have to support it with the weight of my arm because my arm was starting to burn, and other times just holding it. So I was running 4 miles with my hand above my head. It was absolutely exhausting and excruciating. Get there and we're trying to wrap it to pull it off, lube it up to pull it off. It took us 30 minutes to finally get my ring off, 25 minutes at least. Continued on with the rest of the race and was completely by myself at this point. So I had been running hours and hours and hours and hours by myself. I finally make it to the bridge. The bridge made me super queasy. Again, I'm by myself getting pelted by this sand that was just scratching at my legs, scratching at my skin. The wind was so loud in my ears, the bones was starting to hurt. And I remember making it through the bridge and then having an uphill and thinking I need to cheer myself up somehow. I brought some Pop-Tarts, and that's not something we normally buy, but I had it for the carb load before the race. I started eating the Pop-Tarts just to kind of cheer myself up, and that really helped. Listen to a little bit of music, which I hadn't listened to music yet. This was all around mile 13. And I was like, I'm already struggling this much emotionally. My body's hurting and I'm only at mile 13. And I got so discouraged. I'm just now at a half marathon. I've got more than 31 miles. How am I going to make it? And I go to the next aid station and I asked them, I was like, do you have any idea how far back the next person is? And they're like, well, he's a ways back from you, but he's catching up. So if you want, you could just wait for him. So I just took time at that aid station. The next guy caught up, and it was fantastic. He made the world of difference. He had really long legs, so he was just lumbering along with these crazy long legs. And I would like walk a bit and then run a bit and then walk a bit and then run a bit for us to stay like neck and neck. And we just talked the whole time. He had a daughter my age, or two daughters my age, so we just gabbed the whole time. And that was great. There was so many, what are they called? So many tumbleweeds. They were literally piled up in the road. And I'm telling you, this guy was taller than me. I'm 5'11". He was taller than some of my brothers. So he had to have been probably 6'3", 6'4". And the tumbleweeds were taller than him. So like we were having to go completely into this like field to get around the tumbleweeds, getting goat heads in our shoes, trying to get around these tumbleweeds. And then it started a downhill section. And on the course map, like, the uphill and then the downhill, it looked like it would just be cruising, but it was so rocky. And by then it's so hard to pick your feet up. But we were doing it, and I tripped a lot, hurt my toe so bad. I hit a stick and it went through the upper mesh of my shoe and jammed into my toenail and hurt so bad. And then another time I almost fell, but I lifted my foot up and caught myself. But as I was lifting it up, I slammed it into a rock. And so both my toes were like, what are you doing to us? But we ran a ways more. We were getting so close to the finish line and realized we needed to pick up pace to make cutoff. Why is that always a part of these ultramarathon stories? And then we finally were getting close, and my husband mountain bikes, so he was familiar with the trails we were on and had tracking. So he came and found us with the jogging stroller when we were close to a parking area. So he came with the jogging stroller with our two sons, and on the phone he had called his parents. And so they were like cheering through the phone, and it was just really neat, gave me a pickup. And I told this guy, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm up to running the last home stretch. And so at that point we split off. He kept walking, or like doing his like lumbering huge walk. He was a very fast walker. And so I went from like running little steps and walking to keep up with him to just saying, I'm ready to just jog to the finish line. So I took off jogging to the finish line, and at the finish line was Rebecca, who had crewed me, and the women from church, and my husband and kids had driven to the finish line and met us. And that was just really exciting. I was absolutely thrilled. I don't think I made good time, but it was my first ever ultra, first ever real race. Literally, my first ever real race was the 50K.
City girl! First official race ever. You picked an easy one, didn't you, Kathleen? Yeah!
So that was incredible. And it was just so nice. And I remember the moment I stopped, my husband's like, are you cold? Are you cold? And like trying to wrap me up. And I was like, no, I'm hot. And then within a few minutes, I was cold. But he had assumed that because it was like rainy and cold and everyone was bundled up. But I'd been running, so I felt fine. Like, because it had been rainy and, there were warm moments too, for sure. But was cold at the beginning, got cold again at the end, and then had terrible dust and wind and tumbleweeds in the middle. So it was quite an intense race. It ended up being 34 miles and 4,000 feet of elevation gain, which isn't crazy for an ultra, but it felt like a lot for someone who was so new to it. So I got cleaned up and got dressed, and then we drove to Chili's. And I remember trying to walk into Chili's, and it was like I had two sticks for legs, like two poles. They could not bend at all. And I ran into someone on the parking lot on the way into Chili's, and she's trying to say hi. And I literally stumbled off the sidewalk because I couldn't get myself back on, and I couldn't walk straight. But I was so very proud of myself. That was in the fall. I did not run much that summer. But then the next spring, me and Rebecca ran a 5K together. And so it just felt fitting that we finally got to finish a race together, even though she'd been so pivotal in the 50K. we were able to run it side by side. So anyway, since then, she has crewed me for a 50 and 100 miler. So if you want to hear those stories, I'm glad to tell you how I trained for 100 miles on 3 runs a week. But I felt like I should get the first bit out and then over time tell the rest of the story. So this is installment 1, maybe of 3. As the others get told, I'll link them below. For now, this is the story of my first 50K. If you like a good story, subscribe. I've got plenty more to tell you, and I would love to connect. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.